I get asked all the time, what is a vigilante? What does it mean to be a vigilante? And so to explain that, I'm just going to kind of explain where the vigilantes came from. When I started the group, I honestly thought there was going to be like 10 or 20 people who really like the scrap that would want to be a part of the behind the scenes, helping pick out the guests and make the questions. And I never dreamed that the Vigilantes would grow into what it has grown into. Over 700 like-minded souls. If you're a vigilante, you are never alone. We have members from across the country. We have members from across the globe. And it's just amazing what it's become. If you're in there, then you get to be in the Discord. And the Discord is where we do all of our discussions. And people go live and they talk and they ask questions. And we have a channel for bitching and moaning, for presenting classes. It's amazing the fellowship that is involved in being a vigilante. And it's not just that, there's so many other benefits. You get access to the vigilante only swag shop. You get the 15% discount on all merch from Firehouse Vigilance. You get the after parties. You get the vigilante get-togethers when we're all at the same place and we get together and we raise a glass and do a toast and have the vigilante creed. You get the vigilante coin when you hit your 1-year anniversary with your number. The fireaways, the forums, the archives, all of the quarterly projects that are coming that you get to be a part of and get to be behind the scenes on. It's grown into something bigger than I ever imagined. And I want people to know about it. I want people to be a part of it. If you're not a vigilante, why not? I don't know how big it could be. I don't know. I mean, the vigilantes are where the work is at. They're the ones who are getting stuff done. And it's phenomenal to be a part of it. I wanted to get on here and explain where it started, how it came to be, and ask you, if you're not a vigilante, why not? Go to patreon.com/thevigilantes. That's where you sign up. It is $5 a month. I mean, you can't even get a cup of coffee for that anymore. $5 a month and you get to be a part of this unbelievable group. Go to patreon.com, sign up, become a vigilante, and I will see you on the Discord.
In the demanding world of firefighting, training against real-world scenarios is crucial. Yet traditional training facilities often fall short in providing realistic, versatile, and cost-effective training solutions. Affordable Drill Towers presents a groundbreaking solution. By positioning an affordable drill tower alongside your existing Connex boxes burn buildings, a realm of realistic, multi-level training scenarios is unlocked. This integration has been adopted successfully by various fire departments, enhancing their training capabilities exponentially. Delve into the heart of live fire training scenarios within the Connex boxes, now amplified by the ADT's multi-floor access, providing an unparalleled training ground.
We started looking at Connex boxes about probably 10 years ago. To me, you can't beat them, especially for the price. The Affordable Drill Tower was the same way. We've got 6 floors, we've got standpipes on every floor, we've got more anchor points than you can count, we've got removable floors, removable stairs. We can go into the 2nd and 3rd floor off the drill tower, so whether you want us to use it as an external stairwell or a high-rise, we can do all that and mimic just about any type of situation that the members of the fire department might encounter.
Experience cost-effectiveness, enhanced realistic training, versatile operations, easy multi-floor access, and innovative solutions to age-old training challenges. Take your fire department's training to the next level with Affordable Drill Towers. Reach out to Affordable Drill Towers to elevate your training capabilities today.
Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance. It is weekly scrap number 312. My guest tonight is Dave Hageman. He is a 19-year veteran with the Denver Fire Department, where he has served as a technical rescue captain on Tower 1 and spent time on several of Denver's busiest companies. He is a West Point graduate, holds a master's from Johns Hopkins, and earned a PhD in performance psychology. His background includes time as an Army captain and combat veteran, as well as a Division I football player. Outside the fire service, he also serves as a high school football coach for the state championship winning Erie Tigers. All of these different worlds are what we're going to be talking about this evening. He doesn't claim to have it all figured out, but he's passionate about passing on the lessons that have been useful to him. Most importantly, He's been married to his wife, Kim, for 21 years, and together they have 5 children, which continue to be his most important and humbling leadership role. Welcome, my brother, Dave Hageman, to episode number 312.
Thanks, Corley. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited for this episode, man. After that bio, especially, it's going to be an exciting time. Is there anything I left out? Anything you would like to add?
No, let's rock.
All right. Very good. Audience, get your questions primed and ready. People have been in the YouTube chatting it up, getting ready for tonight's show for quite some time. There's already a log of questions that Sam has been pulling from the chat, and we haven't even started discussing anything yet. So that right there is amazing. Kyle Piverall says front row LFG. Benny Clegg's in the house. He's the number one. Benny Clegg has the number one crown right now. He says LFG is going to be a good night. Yes. There is so much hype. I'm trying to catch it all, but there's so much. Jake J. Yeah, Jake J says if you got a fever, you need more cowbell. So there you go. We got some cowbell jokes already coming for you, Chief. So all that being said, there's a ton. Please, audience, there's already a ton of questions, but keep them coming for Chief. It's going to be a good night. So let me do the sponsors, and we'll get to those questions. Affordable Drill Towers, on a mission to bring you cost-effective and versatile training props, like the Affordable Bailout Prop, which allows you to practice window bailouts, ladder bailouts, and ladder high-point rescues. They also offer the Affordable Standpipe Prop, which you can roll into the classroom for standpipe theory, then roll it into the parking lot and pump realistic flows and pressures. And of course, their mainstay, the Affordable Drill Tower. It comes in several configurations and standard with the standpipe system. Choose from 1 or 2 sets of stairs, integrate it into your existing Connex boxes for multi-story access or freestanding on a slab. All models, NFPA 1402 compliant, and gain you ISO credit. The only thing that you can't do on an Affordable Drill Tower is live fire training. Call Steve, 844-55-TOWER, or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. When it comes to building your perfect attack package, you can't just slap any nozzle on any hose and hope for the best. That's a recipe for failure. At Snap Tight Hose, they are not just trying to sell you hose, they are there to make sure you get the right hose paired with the right nozzle for your crew and conditions. Their team of experienced reps knows the stuff inside and out, and they're ready to help. No ego, no judgment, because knowledge is power. And at Snap Tight Hose, they bring both. Visit snaptighthose.com to connect with a rep and start building your ideal hose and nozzle package today. FirestationFurniture.com. They provide a complete line of quality furniture for your firehouse. Firefighter owned and operated. They understand the strain firefighters put on furniture and offer furniture that's built to last. Visit www.firestationfurniture.com for more information. And last, but definitely not least, Insight Fire Training, thermography certified fire service professionals. Insight Fire Training specializes in training individuals across the globe in the tactical use of thermal imaging cameras in emergency services. Insight Fire Training developed the world's first thermography-based collegiate firefighter certification and trains firefighters, manufacturers, and industrial professionals across the globe. And I love Andy Starnes, and Insight Fire Training is amazing. So there's the sponsors, and they are all good. Check them out. They make the scrap go, and we are now ready to get to it, Chief. Starting with, from Army football to the Firehouse, talk to me about that transition, your journey from being recruited to be an athlete for West Point, all the way to where you're currently at as a chief in the Denver Fire Department.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a cool story, and I'll actually back it up back into high school.
Okay.
Because that's where the fire service roots, started to take shape. And before that, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and was always playing sports. Depending on the season, it was either soccer, basketball, baseball. And then when I got into high school, I was finally allowed to play football. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I was told I could try out. So I went to a Jesuit high school in Central Phoenix. And the cool part about that is our coaches. So not only did we have the faculty members that were into athletics and wanted to mold us, and show us life lessons through sports, but we also had a couple Phoenix firefighters that were our coaches. And this was under Brunacini, so he had this program where you could intermittently use your own time to leave shift, come coach for a couple hours, and then go back on shift.
Oh, wow.
And, so, here come these couple of these coaches. So shout out to Coach Ladensack and Coach Hernandez if they're listening. But they'd come in their Phoenix Fire shirts, and God, they were cool. They were fit. They were professionals. But they also had that fine line of having a good time, coaching your football, but then also hammering you if you didn't, know what you were doing.
Right.
And that was great. And, again, they weren't teachers, so they're kind of, unique, and you really looked up to them. And that was my first taste of, firefighters. And man, I kind of want to be one of those. And, it definitely laid the foundation for, the fire service that went dormant for a little bit because of other activities. But yeah, so, and I actually asked one of my teammates, my high school teammates that works for Phoenix Fire, Eric Vandertorn. He goes, yeah, we still do that. And he goes, he coached at my old high school for 10 years doing that same thing. Again, using their own time, to be able to, leave the fire station quickly, come back. And when we talk about outreach, what a better outreach program than have, firefighting coaching. And here I do the same thing, again, not on shift or anything, but, years later, just because it had that much of an impact on me. But yeah, so I had the opportunity to play at the next level. So when I was getting recruited, West Point was ultimately the place I chose. And I didn't know a lot about it. I knew about it from the history books and all that stuff. And, I knew the Army-Navy game, but I thought they were just soldiers.
Right.
Soldiers playing from,
So you weren't a person that was like, I'm going to go to West Point or I'm going to be in the Army or anything like that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And I just didn't have any, family that were in the military.
Right.
And I do remember one thing. When I was getting a tour of my high school, they said, hey, the student giving you a tour today is the number one ranked, student in the whole school. And he's part of the Jesuit tradition is that they would get a full ride to Georgetown University. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And they go, but he turned it down to go to West Point. You're like, wow, okay. Anyway, years later, I had the opportunity to attend there as one of the schools that recruited me, and I just couldn't get past looking at that as a place to attend. Not for football reasons, though they played solid Division I football, but because I knew if I passed up that opportunity, that I'd always wonder if.
Right.
How do I test myself? How do I do all these things?
Just details. I want to know what position were you recruited at?
Well, I was recruited as a fullback.
Okay.
And I was a pretty big fullback. And then, that's, again, 3 days into it, when I actually got to West Point, they made me a defensive lineman. So
okay.
My fullback career didn't last too long, but my football career did.
It was just physical specimen. Let's get him plugged in. Is that what the deal was?
I guess so.
Okay.
But yeah, so anywhere being able to make that decision and probably, not the fact only for football, but probably because I watched too many Rambo movies growing up and the G.I. Joe thing. And, that's something that appealed to me. I want to do that after football. I want to do that after school. This call to service that, was unique to my family, but it was really a calling. So I was able to, attend and play Army football. I was a decent college player, started there for 3 years, but definitely not NFL caliber. But West Point, is more than football, obviously. We had a couple good years. One, we were 10-2, played Auburn in the Independence Bowl. Pretty solid.
Right.
But again, like I said, going to West Point is more than football. It's leadership, structure, grit, all of those things. And, Army football, I think, laid the foundation for that as well as, just being a cadet there. And it's funny when you think about sports and military, there is, this overlap, and it's acknowledged at West Point. And I don't think a lot of people know that, but there's this monument or this statue that, oversees the fields, the ball fields. And it has a quote from General MacArthur, and it says, "Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory." And that's not just for recruited athletes. Every cadet at West Point is an athlete and is, plays sports, intramurals, and all those things. It just stresses the importance of, what you can do in that pre-combat phase, if you will. Being able to build teamwork, leadership, physical, challenges, being able to, override adversity, and I think that plays a big part in it. And that's why, really kind of laid the foundation for not only, the physical attributes and service oriented, but, for me, that performance psychology aspect of it. And then after graduation, I began my Army career as a field artillery officer. And field artillery is basically putting warheads on foreheads. Bradleys, Paladins, mechanized units. That was what I did. And this was all pre 9/11.
Okay.
And that was an interesting time. So I'm glad I got to be able to see pre 9/11 Army, because it's actually a lot like the fire service is now, in the sense where you're doing your training. There's mandatory stuff you do. You're professional, but there was this maybe lack of urgency, if you will, right? Where post 9/11, different story. That changed everything. When you got deployments and doing all those things, there's a sense of urgency that you're trying to get in the best shape of your life. You are going to shooting schools outside of the military. You're going to PT outside of what the military asks for. And you take it upon yourself because that the more fit you can be, the better shot you can be. All these things increase your survival rate, your mission accomplished rate. So it was really interesting to see pre 9/11 Army, and then roll into deployments and see what that looks like. So, again, how do we compare that to the fire service? And I don't know if we'll ever have that post 9/11 urgency, because that's pretty significant. And I think at times we dip into that. And the only thing I can relate that to is when we had the George Floyd protests that turned into riots in Denver. For a short period of time, there's a sense of urgency where you don't know what's going to happen once you roll out the doors. Your head's on a swivel. You're trying to, draw some things up that, maybe you didn't train for specifically, but you also know that, there's hostility around.
Right.
So again, interesting thing to throw back and forth, but yeah, I'll continue answering your question. But that's just a little perspective with, pre 9/11, graduating West Point. And then when I got to my, unit and post 9/11 operation started, I was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, the first one. And, that's where we dropped off in Kuwait and, trying to cross the border into Iraq. And we didn't know what to expect. We heard rumors of chemical attacks, booby traps, this unrelenting force that's just waiting for us there. And again, just chaos. We didn't know what to ensue. And we were able to, actually do conventional field artillery with our Paladins and our Bradleys and laser guided munitions and all that cool stuff that we were trained for over the years. And it was an awesome opportunity to you practice it so much and then being able to put it, in combat operations. Incredible. But then we pushed through, and then we split up in these different cities like Haditha and Ramadi. And we parked all the technology, all the firepower, all the armor, and we parked those because they weren't, the mission had changed.
Right.
So now we go into, again, being protected, being trained on different things, having all this conventional technology, to our use to, now we have these light-skinned Humvees that we're going to be doing patrols in the cities with. And when I say light-skinned Humvees, we're lucky if they had doors on. And if they did have doors on, we'd take an extra flak vest and put it over the window for some extra armament. We'd lay a cot over the back of the Humvee to be able to put a gunner or overwatch on top. So, again, going completely technological and with all these resources to now, stripping all those things away, have an evolving mission. And you can imagine, as a leader, not much life experience, and no one has experience in this realm, trying to, motivate your group and try to go, all right, well, hey, I know we're under-resourced. I know we're not trained for this, but we have a mission to accomplish, and we're going to set out and do it. So we're literally drying stuff up in the dirt. We're, doing all those things and trying to maintain that sense of balance of, taking care of one another,
Right.
and also understanding that we have a greater mission to accomplish. And the logistical train of resources are going to take months to catch up to us. Whether that be food, mail, proper equipment, but again, just realizing, hey, this is what we have, and let's figure it out.
Right on.
So now, again, when we did that, we thought we'd be there for 3 months, kick ass, and come back like Desert Storm the first time, but that wasn't the case. So quickly on, they're like, hey, we're going to be here for a year plus. And all right, let's dig in. Let's do this. Now, when it was a tough year, learned a lot though. Wish I could go back and change some things, but sometimes the best way you learn is by going through some of those things, right?
Sure. And you were an officer at this point, and how
I
old were you?
was.
How old were you at
Yes.
this point when it started?
25 years old.
Okay, so 25-year-old man.
Right.
Yeah,
But we're all going through it together. It's not like
Sure.
we had other people to rely on that had been through, other operations like they would the following years in the deployments. And then when I returned, I planned to leave active duty and try to put to use my systems engineering degree that I got. But the DoD implemented this stop loss policy that you couldn't get out of the Army. So what I'd do is, for my next assignment, I was a rear detachment commander, and I'd support casualty operations, which was, one, an honor, but also, two, high stress, in the sense where you want to make sure our fallen soldiers are taken care of and their families as well. So I'd fly all over the country going to some of these funerals: West Orange, New Jersey, Jackson, Mississippi, Racine, Wisconsin, and whatnot. And the commonality of all these things was the fire service kind of intertwined in all this, because the military operations were spread pretty thin, but somehow the fire department would show up to help out. And again, it wasn't that we were asking them; they just show up and go, "Hey, can we help you?
Right.
With escorts? Can we help you? With the flags? Can we help you with all these things?" And it was amazing. And then when I found out, I talked to some of these firefighters offline, and again, all the different places I'd go to, and they love their job. Not just like their job, they love their job, and they'd want to tell me all about it. And I told them that I was getting out. They're like, you should look into, the fire service. And really, those type of experience interwoven, I was like, I should. And the more I looked into it, I'm like, okay, next trip, I'm going home. I'm signing up for my EMT class at the local community college, and we're going to knock that out. And I remember telling my dad about that. And he was a union plumber for over 30 years. And he was excited. And he goes, well, let me introduce you to my high school friend. He's been, on the Phoenix Fire Department for so many years. So he introduced me to LB Bouchon, and was able to do ride-alongs. And I started doing testing all over the country, and then wound up with the Denver Fire Department. Lucked out, and been with that department close to 20 years. And really, that's the story on how I found the fire service.
No, that's amazing.
Dormant, foundation or maybe how it found me. That's probably how best it happened.
And the things that gets me from your story too is rewinding back to the beginning when you were talking about those coaches who worked for Phoenix Fire Department, Phoenix firefighters, and that I don't know if you can quantify how much that affected you, just kind of tilted you towards that later, that small bit where it's like, wait, that's pretty cool. And then later on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine, like, you see your teachers all day. Right. So you see them in class, you see them on the field. It's kind of, you take that for granted. But here comes, Phoenix firefighters, and they're in their shirts, and they're in good shape, and they're fun, and they're, they just kind of exude that professionalism. But they're just as you can imagine, the kitchen table. They give you a hard time, but then they also love on you, and they, hold you accountable and want you to be the best you can be. So
my segue is, how long have you been coaching locally there at Denver while being on the Denver Fire Department?
So I coach in my hometown, which is Erie, so a little suburb of Denver.
Sure.
I've been doing that for about 7 years.
And so my question is, do you think that have you seen any results of the recruitment from that, like being a firefighter, coaching those, as those young men have graduated and moved on? Has you seen any of that same spin out that you're aware of?
Well, I don't know if it's, my influence, but, the fire service is, a pretty appealing gig. So I've had
Sure.
a lot of my former players then reach out to me, and, so I've helped them out, tutored them up, to be able to test with the other local departments, and hopefully be able to get some on my rig one day.
Right on, right on. No,
Mhm.
no, I wondered how, if you'd seen any impact, actual measurable impact. You know what I mean? 'Cause I know it's had an impact. Everybody knows the impact that a good coach has on a young player, especially if you've coached them to the championship level, which that's no small feat at any level.
Right.
No matter, you know what I'm saying? That is no small feat. And I know that that's a huge impact because you don't get there without solid principles and investing in those players. And so I know that makes an impact. So I just wondered if there was any, uh, I hate to use the word impact over and over, but impact on your recruitment
But
as a firefighter.
I think there is, because, again, I'll try to do the same thing. And, it's easy to put the fire service in a good light because we do cool things and we help people out and we have fun doing it.
All right. I'm going to pivot to the questions because they are stacking up. Holy smokes. We got more questions we can get to already. Jeremy Humphrey coming at you. The Hump wants to know, Chief, what are some specific mental tools or strategies from your PhD research that firefighters can use to stay focused under pressure?
Okay. Um, well, I'd like to lay the foundation for how I got into performance psychology, if that's all right.
Go.
Um, and, because the cool part about, performance psychology, and this is what I teach in some of the lectures I go to, is that a lot of it is intuitive. We know it, right? So we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed with a lot of these tools, because a lot of it's intuitive. But again, we need to be the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. That's what one of my mentors said. He goes, that's the root of performance psychology is you're there to help people remind themselves of the person that they want to be. But anyway, we'll get into three things that kind of pushed me in that direction. And one was from those Army days that I was telling you about. So probably like many of the people that grew up playing sports, naturally use these war metaphors growing up, right? We're going to kill them. Let's get the enemy, let's destroy them, all those things. And why do we do that? Well, we do that to kind of make something that's just a game seem more important.
Okay.
It's life and death, if you will.
Sure.
And why do we do that? Right? Well, because we want to increase our performance. So mentally, we're just thinking, hey, if we make this a life and death scenario, we try to hype everyone up. We're gonna rise to that level of performance to be able to, again, self-preservation and do all those things. And does it work? Sometimes, right? Initially, yeah, it brings some energy and all those things. And even so, I did that right in high school and youth sports, and then even at a service academy where some of those metaphors and terms, have a little bit more impact because
Sure.
potentially one day you're going to be actually doing that. So, but again, still, it hypes you up. It is part of that, motivation to keep you going. Well, when I found myself in some of those chaotic situations, about to roll out the gate, like I said, understaffed, undertrained, and overworked to a certain degree. What I found myself saying wasn't, all right, let's go get the bad guys, let's defend this or whatever. What I found myself saying was, all right, it's game time. And what that meant to me after I looked at it was, look, I didn't need to get any more motivated. I didn't need to get adrenaline up. What I needed to do was calm myself down. What I needed to do was tell myself, you've been through this before, even though you haven't. Right? This is just like a game, and you've been successful at working through adversity on the court and the field and whatnot. So use those same skills. Again, intuitively, I didn't know. This was all subconscious and conscious things that were going through my mind, but it really got me thinking about the mind. And I think we all have these mental tools that we use. And one of the reasons I wanted to kind of really study that was to be more intentional with those tools and how to use them. So that was the first one. And the second one is concurrent with being in the Army and then fire service, I've been a strength coach for probably 25 years or so. And one of the things that I've noticed is I can write the perfect program for someone, tailor it to their needs. And however, what I've noticed is more times than not, people won't follow through with the program.
Right.
And at first it frustrated me to all end. Like, hey, is it the sets? Is it too hard? Is it too easy? Am I not creating the right environments? Is it the schedule? Is it the playlist? Who knows? What's going on here? So that frustrated me to no end, but then it began to fascinate me. Why
Okay.
is it?
No, I'm already deeply fascinated. I want to know.
And it's not because it's not our lack of ability. It's our psychology that gets in the way. And again, that planted another seed where, I pivoted from being a strength coach to a mental coach, because that's where I saw the barrier for success. Not, again, putting in the work, because we all can do it. It's just showing up and what you tell yourself to be able to, stay consistent with those things. And then the final one is really just the fire service itself. We work so hard to, earn the badge, but then, I guess, I'm confused when, those that work so hard to earn the badge then become miserable wearing it.
Right.
And, because of a lot of different things, right? Firehouse dynamics, absorbing passive frustration, and it turns into their own frustration, and things that are out of the control that spiral into this, this unhealthy environment. So those are the three things that really got me to dig into performance psychology. And I've read the books just like everyone else, but I wanted to do a deeper dive into some of those things. So that was the basis for why I wanted to dive into it. But then I went to a lecture by Chief Dave Griffin, so from Charleston.
Right.
And, again, being able to sit down on one of his lectures, I love going to lectures. I love going to conferences, training on my own time. And he was one of the ones that, vicariously, hey, he went to get, his degree. Now maybe I can do that. And,
okay.
I reached out to him, and he was gracious enough to, lay out the framework for me, be honest. And then I contacted him like 3 years after that and go, hey, Chief, I did it. Just wanted to let you know.
I made it.
And he goes, hey, awesome. Pay it forward type of thing. But let's get back to some of those tools that you were talking about, right? I kind of introduced some things of, why it fascinated me. But here's some of the things that, I want to be, some of the tools to give the listeners about that and what I've learned. And we can dive into theories and all those things, but I don't think, those are as important as the actual tools. And I know I've been very descriptive about certain things, and I'd rather be prescriptive in the sense of giving you, some tools to talk about it. And I got three things for you. So one is what I call identity work. And what that is I know we've all had creeds and mantras that come to mind. People have actually, written out, an entire credo, personal mission statement, all of those things. And then I ask them, well, how did that work out for you? I'm like, I can't remember 4 things, much less, an entire page of,
right.
What I believe in myself or what I want to do. So really, when I found this skill and molded it, it became more successful to me anyway. And again, that is thinking about the type of person you want to be. And let's dive into that a little bit. So you do before you become, right? If we wait on becoming something to actually do those deeds, it's reverse. We've got to start doing the work before we actually, feel like the person that we're becoming. But here's the exercise. I want you to pick 3 words that define the person you want to become. Not the job you want to have, not the rank you want to hold, but the type of person you're aiming for. And I want you to make them cool words, right?
Okay.
So something that means something to you. And then I'll give you my example. And they evolve. When I was in high school, they were probably different than now me as, a 47-year-old, father of 5. And, for me, those 3 words are warrior, scholar, and father.
Hmm.
So those are my guiding things. And then I dive a little bit more into it. Well, what does that mean? So what does a warrior mean? Well, for me, a warrior is physically fit. They're tactically sharp. They're skilled in their profession. They protect others. And what does that mean on a daily basis, right? That's how we distill these things. Like, it's good to talk about it, but let's prescribe what we do and reverse engineer this, how to get there on a daily basis. Well, that means, hey, if I want to be physically fit, I need to train every day. If I'm going to be, tactically sharp, I need to work on those skills. So meaning I need to train the body, the mind, and a skill every day to be able to get to where I want to be, whether I feel like it or not. Right. So that's under the warrior. That's one of those things that, I'd like, I want my identity to be. And the second is a scholar. And for me, that means, someone who reads, reflects, creates, mentors, and teaches. So how do you reverse engineer that? Well, I build space in my day to study, to write, teach others, be uncomfortable by being on this podcast, not just absorb the knowledge, but try to do something with it. Right? That's
Sure,
a challenge
sure.
for the rest of us. So those are the two things. And then the third one is being a father. And there's a lot of other terms you can use, but for me, that means, it means that, I'm loving, I'm present, I'm patient, I'm a role model, I'm a sheepdog, to my family. But then what does that look like? Well, it means, I've got to be fun with the kids. I got to do those things. I got to, be present. I got to have meaningful conversations. And that can be tough with having 5 kids and having a meaningful conversation. But if you dedicate it to it, it doesn't have to be this big, long sit down. It just needs to be a quick check-in. And, those are the things I try to hold myself to. And it helps, rather than this list of goals or this, to be able to have these 3 words, that mean something to me, and that unfold into all these other daily activities.
And you have to do before you become. And so once you define what you want to become with these 3 words, then you just have to do it.
Just have to do it. And
pretty simple. It's easy, right?
Pretty simple. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's simple. And that's one of those things, and the beauty about action, right? If you don't feel like you're the person you want to be, right? Like Thanos, you just snap your finger, do something that person would do, and then you naturally start becoming that person. Right? Because you can't trick your mind into some of those things. I know a lot of people think, the mind is strong, yes, but a lot of times, our psychology leads our biology, or the reverse. So movement leads to good things. Good habits build other good habits, and those are intuitive, right? I think we all understand that, but sometimes we need to be reminded. And then the next one is, it kind of sounds paradoxical, but it's not. It's talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself.
Talk to yourself. Don't listen to yourself.
Right. And that's the tool of self-talk. And it's intentional. And what that means is, again, it sounds simple, but it's a shift in your mind. So most people don't realize that how much we're being run by our passive thoughts. And we don't know where those thoughts come from. Right? They just passively float in and out. Some say it's, demonic, some spiritual, things. Some
There's like a Jungian thing and like the shadow and
right.
Okay.
Absolutely. And also it could just be low blood sugar, right? The medical term hangry, like it affects your body.
Absolutely.
Our biology affects our psychology sometimes because of that. Right. But we have to be cognizant of those thoughts, and we have to have this filter on there, because if we just listen to ourselves, passively listen to ourselves, what do we hear? Well, we hear self-doubt. We hear, people, those, passive voices reminding us of times we screwed up, embarrassing
criticisms.
Right, absolutely. Those things just float in, and we don't, again, it doesn't matter where they come from, but they do, right? And what happens? Like, we wouldn't talk to our best friend that way. What floats in and out of our mind. So why do we do it to ourselves? Because it's passive. What we need to do, again, talk to ourselves, don't listen to yourself. So active self-talk. What does that mean? That means, well, we talk about different things, right? So you wake up, and rather than just listening to yourself, how tired you are, you're like, all right, here's what we're going to do today. we're going to get our lift in. I know we're going to be dragging butt, but then we're going to get to it and we're going to feel better because of it. We're going to, not just survive the shift, we're going to lead through the shift. All those things. So you come up with this script, right, of things to lead you to those identities of who you want to be. Right. And it's extremely powerful. It sounds simple, right? But it's not easy, because we try to talk ourselves into this because we think there's something sexier, this voodoo, this Flex Seal that we're going to slap on that's really going to fix it without any effort, and that's not.
No, absolutely. I love it because in my own life, I have a very powerful voice that will tell me how terrible I am doing if I allow it to. You know what I'm saying? And it'll rip at anything I'm working on. So I love the proactivity involved in what you're saying.
Right, and part of it goes back to our primal brains. In the sense we're not wired for greatness, we're wired for survival. And when you learn about this, right, the default setting for our mind is comfort and not excellence, right? Think of a hovering parent that doesn't want their kid to get anything, right? The overprotective parent that doesn't want their kid to be uncomfortable, challenged, anything like that. That's our primal brain. They're trying to keep us away from discomfort and conserve energy and not get ousted from the tribe. All those primal things that, again, is some archaic wiring that's not again good for contemporary greatness. Right? And those are useful thousands of years ago, but it's a liability if we want to be the best version of ourselves today. So we have to override it, and we do that with positive self-talk. You author your own narrative, and you get better at it because you know the enemy. We know the excuses we're going to float to ourselves, right? We'll do it later. Well, one of the mantras I use is later is a lie. Okay, because if I say I'm going to do it later, that's probably a lie. I'm lying to myself.
Right. And you know it. So let me ask you this, Dave. Yeah. In your personal battles, do you find yourself going to the body or going to the mind to overcome yourself more? In other words, which do you try to, how am I saying it? In other words, do you hit the gym to get yourself under control, or do you hit your self-talk to get yourself under control, or is that not even a fair question?
Well, sometimes it's chicken before the eggs, but for me, I find that if I can go do something physical, if I can do the movement first, right, the brain will follow.
Okay.
Right. But there's, overcoming that inertia initially to be able to get, to actually do those movements.
Right.
Move, whether it's, whether the movement is sitting down to write or converse or, whatever it is, to do the action. Right. Because if not, you're going to talk yourself out of it.
Sure.
You find a way to talk yourself out of it. We'll do it later. We'll start fresh. And that goes for nutrition, hard conversations, everything like that.
Everything. Yeah.
Yep. So those are the two. And the final one is really being able to expect resistance in what we call narrative override. And what does that look like? Well, that means, you can do everything right. Right? You're having a great day. You're doing everything right. And, if we put this in fire terms, you're doing the training, you're doing all these things, and then something happens, and again, why did this happen to me? Like, I'm doing all these right things, but then something comes in that you can't control. And guess what? A lot of things we can't control. And then some people just, the wheels fall off and they go into this, autocatalytic spiral of, disappointment, blaming others, all of those things that we know to be true. Like I said, I'm not telling you anything that's, new. We just need to be reminded of it. We need to understand why it's happening and, how does that affect us? So what I tell people a lot of times when we talk about narrative override is you got to understand, the things that are coming at you, right? Know your enemy to a certain degree. And what I tell people is you got to expect disappointment at some level. And sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow, but, I'll say, you got to realize at some point that people and organizations will let you down. And that is not a criticism on any organization or any individual person. It just means that people aren't going to give you what you need at the time you need it all the time, right? So you have to expect that disappointment. So meaning that it's completely up to you. Hey, you can't depend on someone else or an organization to hand you everything you need to be excellent at the time that you're ready to absorb it. But what are you going to do about it? Knowing that you can't rely on people in organizations just out of sure alignment and priorities. All right, now what are you going to do about it? How are you going to get what you need, and how are you going to become the person that you need to be? Right, and that's that's an empowering thing, because what happens a lot of times, well, we start blaming other people, we start blaming organizations, and that's a full-time job if you let it be. However, we need to take ownership of those things and try to control what we can. Can we control what we do on a daily basis? Yes. And if we adhere to those three tools, those mental tools, again, it's not going to be easy. It's not sexy, but I guarantee you're going to see benefit because of it.
So the summary is: do before you become. Define those 3 words of what you want to be. Define them so that you can do those things, so you can become what you want to be. Talk to yourself. Don't listen to yourself. And then the final one is expect resistance, expect disappointment. And then the narrative override is, now what are you going to do about it?
Absolutely. So identity exercise, talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself, and narrative override.
Love it. I love it, man. There you go. Jeremy Humphrey, I hope you were asking because you just got a class on that question, and that was a great answer. Hump has another one for you. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Key insights from your military background. Which key insights from your military background helped you navigate adversity and maintain standards in the fire service?
I think you realize, in the military, you realize, I got caught a couple times when, didn't enforce my pre-combat checks on our vehicles, right? You just kind of gotten into a habit of, yeah, they're good, you're good. And then you trust your people, to be able to do those. But you realize that we're all human at times. And just like sometimes, there is a, nudge to be like, well, everything's here. Well, is it? Okay. Well, there were a couple times where we got caught and, we didn't have a case of MREs on there, and we got stranded, and we needed, things. Or we were missing, something that, was supposed to be there for the reason. And, again, you look on the people that were supposed to do it, but then again, as a leader, right? Trust but verify. We've all heard that before, and being able to be accountable for some of those things. But honestly, it was great being in the fire service and going from, captain in the Army to scrubbing toilets, as an entry-level firefighter, because you appreciate, the work and, how everyone has their task and their job. And sometimes I think new people forget that, hey, we've all been doing these things, and there's a rhyme or reason to it. And we're not always going to sit down and explain to you, the benefits of some of these things, but I think they do have benefit in being able to, have a standard, understand what the standard is. And again, as a team, especially as a crew, being able to trust but verify that we're all doing the things that we're supposed to be able to do, that we're all relying on, us to, have that accountability and have those accountability measures. I hope I'm answering that. I don't feel like I did. So
I think definitely with the beginning of the complacency of not checking the rigs and making sure everything is done, I can absolutely see that translating to the fire service.
Yeah. And then, what I was talking about when we talk about mission accomplishment and the evolving mission that we faced during that first phase of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where we go to conventional Army, what we were trained for, what we had great technology for, and then guess what? The mission changes. The mission changes that because of something, we need to adjust and do something differently. And again, what's going to happen? Well, hey, we know you don't have the proper equipment for this. We know you haven't been trained on this properly, but we have to do it. And we have to accomplish the mission. Everything will catch up to us. Like, hey, we've ordered these things. We have these, training maybe coming in. But in the meantime, we have to figure out a way to, as a crew, as a unit, to be able to perform the mission, accomplish the mission with reduced resources, reduced training, I mean, that was something that you see in the fire service all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes our mission changes, or the technology changes, and there's a learning curve that we try to flatten as much as we can, but we can't get rid of it. And being understanding to those things. And I think some people think, well, we shouldn't have done it this way, or we should have done it this way. Well, okay, you may be right, but this is what it is, and we have to figure a way to get it done.
No, and the fire service is notorious for doing more with less and being proud of it. As in the face of that adversity, and I'm sure the military is no different. But I didn't ever serve, so it's an assumption by me, and so.
Well, absolutely. Like we say, only the names have changed.
The Kyle Piverall says, from your perspective, what can the fire service do to help maintain standards the way the military does? And the first question I'd ask is, does the military maintain standards the way a civilian looks at it and says, man, they maintain standards? I mean,
Ready? It depends. And, I'll give you that question. It depends. Just like the fire service, it depends on your unit, your department, your station, right? There's a certain set of baseline foundational expectations. And then some will take pride in adhering to those expectations and building that culture, right? And others are more lax with that, and they'd rather just, be about performance and not some of those other things. Well, I don't think you can have one without the other. Maybe that's just like the old man yelling, "Get off my lawn." But, that military background, like there's a reason for certain standards. And I think that breeds, pride and professionalism. But there are, again, units, there's platoons and that don't necessarily adhere to it. But the best part of it, I think the way to influence that the most is what can you control? Like being able to, show what right looks like and to embody it and then have those conversations, right? You make the correction, you have the conversations, but more importantly, you create that connection of, hey, this is, what we're going to be doing, and this is why, this is the standard we're going to hold, and then embody it. It's not a quick fix to get everyone to buy into it, but being able to, hold yourself accountable to those standards, model that behavior, right? And then it catches on.
Right on. And I don't know of a better answer to the question than what you gave, as far as just modeling the behavior and setting the standard and absolutely setting the example. Benny Clegg wants to know, what are some things that you learned from coaching high school athletes that have helped with teaching the probie/rookie?
Yeah, it's I always say that being a coach at the high school level is not far off being in the fire service sometimes, right? In the sense where you got competitive people that want to do the right thing, but sometimes we feel like it and sometimes we don't. But we have a cool mission, but a lot of times there's some monotony of practice and drills and doing the same thing, but trying to bring the energy as a coach. And again, that goes for senior firefighter, that goes for the head coach, because at times the position coach may bring the energy that the head coach needs, or the players may bring the energy that brings up the position coach for the day. But it is a leadership lab in the sense of being able to trial and error and hold yourself to a standard of why you're going to be there. Well, we're here obviously for a game, right? And we try to build it up to be more than just a game. But I laid out that foundation of why sports is important and why I'm a part of coaching that, because all these lessons that we talk about, suffering through adversity, when you talk about wins and losses, if someone got beat out for a position, being able to have that conversation with them, why it happens, what do they need to do to get there. Those aren't unique to just high school sports. Those are very much life skills, having a conversation with someone why you're choosing this person over another person for a position, or to be on your rig, or who knows what it is, to be able to have some conversation assessment tools as well. What we started doing was tracking attendance, who would show up here, who would do there. So it's not just senior based. It's you didn't show up to a lot of these different things, and so and so did. So they're a step ahead of you, and here's what you need to do to be able to bridge that gap to be a competitor. So those are some of the things that I've gotten out of it, and just how to communicate with kids. I've noticed that holding off on hard conversations doesn't make it any easier down the road.
Right.
Being able to lay out your expectations, and probably ad nauseum with the high school athletes, I try to lay out my expectations pretty early on. And, whether it's letting me know if they're not going to be there, if they don't understand what, what the drill is or what I expect for them on Friday nights. And being able to follow up and give them grace. And when you talk about probationaries and training with other members on your rig, the lesson I learned in early on as an Army officer is meeting people where they are at, and that's a big one. When I was a strength coach at West Point as a graduate assistant, me and my other friend, we had a sergeant that maybe a little bit deconditioned, but he had mentioned that he wanted to work out with us, and instead of meeting him where he was, we took it as a challenge of,
we're going to destroy this man.
He's going to hop in. And we're going to have a great workout. And, that wasn't the right answer.
Sure.
Because what happened was, extremely sore. He never wanted to do it again. He had a horrible experience. We didn't meet him where he was at. And it didn't accomplish the mission. Again, there was part of that thing, well, he shouldn't have been in the shape he was in. He should be, well, okay, that's, regardless, this is where we're at.
Right.
And we have to meet, that person where they're at. And I didn't do a good job doing that. And I learned a lot. I'm like, we could have really helped this person out. We could have, created that ramp, for him to, have more, positive habits, get in better shape. But instead we made it a terrible experience for him.
Right on. No. And that's one of those that you have to live with, because, and not, some are worse than others, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
But, it's those things you look back on and wish you had a do-over. And so 100%. Rob Fisher wants to know, here's my question, Chief. What's the one thing you've wanted to change at the DFD that you haven't been able to accomplish yet?
One is we're trying to implement really a, officers academy. And we've been trying to do that for years. And, some years we've been hovering on the being able to keep it consistent, because there's some years where we did it like, hey, we did it. But we weren't able to sustain it because it required a bunch of volunteers.
Sure.
Required, the moons aligned and we were able to do it, even though it wasn't mandatory. We were asking people to, donate their time. The soon-to-be lieutenants come in on their day off and different things like that. We weren't able to systematically put something in place to replicate it all the time. And, that's something that I think we're going to continue to strive for. But financially, we can't just make it happen and do it conventionally. We got to figure out ways to work around budgetary restraints and all those things, but it's important.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way to make it happen. Because, right now, the only rank that gets the good training is, our entry-level firefighters. Dedicated training. You don't go out to the streets till you get a certain base level of things. And we try to outsource it, right? You try to outsource it by going, doing your fire officer 1 and instructor 1 and do these things, and a lot of self-study and come back for a certification test. But there's a better way to do it. And we're still trying to figure out how to do that.
No, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal that you're striving towards that. And also the challenges of, it feels like, yes, we knocked it out of the park this year. Let's do it again next year. And it just takes that one thing to knock the whole thing off kilter, and it don't repeat.
Oh yeah. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, remember we did it that one time? Yeah, that was like 10 years ago.
Right. Holy smokes. Yeah. No, I feel that in my soul. Fireman 718 wants to know, what lessons did you learn from Chief McGrail? So we talk about an open-ended question.
The one, Chief McGrail's been through a lot, and the one thing I learned, one of many things that I learned from him, was the way he kept a positive attitude and stayed into the job. Always learning. And that's something that he never spoke about. You just observed, right? You're like, well, I can't hear what you're saying. I'm too busy watching you.
Right on.
Right? Something like that, where he'd be the guy that's has the most experience as a district chief on the job, but then he'd be sitting in your class while you're teaching company officers and taking notes. So that was something that I just really admired about him, in the way that he always kept his positivity.
Right on. No, and anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of Chief McGrail. Luke Stevenson wants to know, bringing ideas into the fire service from the military / sports can create an evolutionary leap when it works. Did you try to bring anything which didn't work or wasn't the right fit?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes you push a little too hard, right, and it doesn't go the way you want, and that's um, when you talk about uniforms and everything, and then you make compromises. So sometimes that's one of those things where I learned. I'm like, well, hey, I come from the military background, and that's one of those things that especially the way we're uniform. Let's compromise. Let's just make sure our shirts are tucked in, and our boots are at a place where we don't look like the caretaker from Caddyshack. Okay, let's compromise here, and that's the standard. So yeah, I mean there is it's different cultures to a certain degree. Yeah, there's some similarities, but you try to the fire service is great in some aspects. It's better than the military, and it can be conversely. And you don't want to. I don't want to make the military the fire department, or vice versa. They serve different purposes. I love the fire service the way it is now. We can tweak things, right, to make them better.
Sure.
Do those things, but I don't want to make it the military.
I love it. I do love it. Thank you, Luke. It's a great question. I love those ones. Greg Carter wants to know, from your experience in the military, training athletes, and the fire department, what are your thoughts on doing live fire training on a more frequent basis? For example, most departments I know do it once, maybe twice a year. And there's some departments that don't even get to it that frequently. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if we can do it, let's do it. Because that is one of those things where you can talk about it all day long, but until you feel it, until you do those things, you don't understand it. And I think we're trying to be able to adhere to get everyone in there to get a live burn at least once a year. But if that's not, again, the organization is not going to hold you, is not going to give you everything you need to be excellent. And if you feel that that's not enough, right? Sometimes we have to break out of the organizational constraints that we have and be able to do some self-study and go out there. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's plenty of training that maybe we can go to Indianapolis, right, and go work with FTN, to be able to get some live fire training and do those things. But yeah, I mean, if we could maximize doing that and set a standard for once or twice a year, I think organizationally, that would be a good place to start.
Joe Gavita says, with your educational background and your degrees, can you speak on the importance of the balance of formal education and fire-related training / education? Where do you fall on it?
Well, it's what your passion is too, right? I mean, depending on where I was, I didn't go back to school for a long time. And if you made me go back to school, I'd go kicking and screaming.
Right.
But we catch passion in a different way. So that's why, I actually like the fact that, we can go out there and it's a choose your own adventure of what you're interested in. Now, I wish we could, have some funding to go along with that to help, offset some of those costs. And maybe we can find ways to do that. I know, some employee organizations, we have one called FIRE that helps, send us out to training and do different things and helps compensate you a little bit for some of the classes you take and the books you buy to better yourself. But I kind of appreciate the choose your own adventure part of it and to follow your passion. And because there's been many times where, and I, for whatever reason, I want to do some academic stuff, but then, I can't lose sight on, shoot, I got to go, I heard there's this new training, that I want to go see, on engine ops, and I can be able to go do that. Because that's the part of when I say, if the organization mandated everything, that wouldn't leave a lot of wiggle room for us being able to choose where we wanted to go and things to do. Now there's a certain baseline that we need to adhere to, like a certain standard, but being able to see what else is out there. If it wasn't the case, man, I'd never have been to nozzle forward. I would never been to, an irons and ladders forcible entry class or taken a brine brush class. And those things changed the trajectory of, my fire service career, being able to, get in front of good, passionate instructors rather than it being mandatory.
Right on.
And then formal education, it's a passion, right? You got to be able to, it's got to be something you want to do. I don't want to mandate it because, again, like I said, if you caught me at the right time, I'd be kicking and screaming, and it would cause more problems than it would solve.
Right
so
on.
That would be my answer to that.
No, and a very realistic answer too. And I love the fact that you said when you're passionate about it, and leaning into those passions. Kyle Piverall wants to know about technical rescue, and he says, "What is your favorite TRT discipline?"
Well, I got into it, and I didn't think it would be, one of my favorite disciplines. But again, when you're talking about different training classes and kind of self-study and going outside the department, trench rescue actually became one of those ones I was really passionate about. By being able to attend some training and really learn from passionate people, that would filter through Colorado, was incredible. And I never thought I'd be passionate about some of those things, but then the passion of those instructors rubbed off at me. And the next thing you know, I'm looking at new equipment or how to get a bang for our buck with the different shoring systems that we have and whatnot. But that became something that I was really interested in and that I really wanted to dive a little bit deeper into.
Very cool. And no, I get it, because that was one of my favorites when I went and got Rescue Tech, was the actual building of all the systems to make it possible. Eddie Robinson coming at you. Chief Eddie Robinson wants to know, as a commissioned officer, what's the best piece of advice you ever received from an NCO?
That's tough. I'd rely heavily on my NCOs, almost to a fault. And sometimes I got burned and sometimes I didn't. But a lot of times, I think one of the best answers was, hey, we're not going to solve this problem in a day. We got to pace ourselves. And I think that resonates to the fire station as well. When we talked about meeting people where they're at, you're not going to solve everything in a day. And if you try to, again, it's actually going to work against you. So being able to come up with a way to systematically chip away at the things you want to accomplish rather than just overwhelming people. Because sometimes when you find, your passion doesn't, again, mirror other people's passion, both ways, there's got to be a compromise. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be a strategic way to chip away at the things without overwhelming people, right? We're not going to stay up till 2:00 in the morning doing training 3 times a day, every day, if people aren't ready to receive that. Now, if you try to mandate it, then you're going to come up with more problems than you have. And hopefully, again, by being, proactive into those things, you start attracting people that, want to do a little bit more every time. And then it becomes a problem of holding them back. Hey, easy guys, let's not, can't do it all in a day.
Right on. And patience. It's not a shock and awe campaign. A war of attrition, without a doubt. Taylor Shepard says, when I hear Denver, I think high-rise ops. And of course, we talked about, you've been to every HROC, you said. What would be your advice for department that have high rises, yet still have high pressure 1 3/4 in their high-rise packs?
And again, I haven't been to every HROC, just about all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes family got involved in that one.
Sure. Especially being in December.
Oh, yeah. And that's one where, the Denver Fire Department has evolved as well. It's not coming, it doesn't happen overnight. It is, again, it's evolutionary, not revolutionary. And, the best thing to do is start getting the information from the other departments. And Denver is one of them. We've come a long way. And, the amount, since I've been on the job, and we've tried a bunch of different things, and we went through a lot of growing pains. So the best thing to do is reach out to some of the organizations. You're welcome to reach out to to myself and get some information to be able to educate your neck of the the fire service, to be able to show them kind of why we do things, how it's laid out, how we got there. And sometimes the best bang for your buck, like, you're not going to be able to change your whole system, but how can we start slowly getting to a better answer, specifically for high-rise operations, because it is different. There's a different way of thinking. There's a different way of, attacking those type of emergencies.
Great. I mean, that's phenomenal questions, and I love them coming in. I'm looking. There's still so many, Chief. So I'm going to pick some here. And but Kyle Pipperall says, through your research, do you believe the flow state is something you can put yourself in at a specific time with practice?
I haven't found the answer yet. When you talk about all the authors that speak to the flow state, and in performance psychology as well, there's debate if it actually exists.
Sure.
I think we've all felt that that unconscious competence, that you're just doing, you're not thinking, you're just
in the zone,
right? And I haven't found a way to hit a button where we can get there. And I'm still looking, I still go through the research and the journals to be able to find a way to do that, because that would be the answer, right? To be able to find a way to really have that, as a toggle switch, that and confidence, right? We talk about confidence, hey, if I could just toggle, like we tell our kids, hey, be more confident. Well,
sure,
we know that it's not that easy because we can't do it ourselves.
Right.
But yet we, speak to our children like it's hey, it's easy, just believe in yourself. Well, no, there's more to it that we have to investigate. So I don't believe that's, easier said than done. What I do believe is the more training, practice, preparation that we do, the more likelihood that we're going to have better experiences that feel like a flow state, right? Because it's not magically going to happen. But again, if we can prepare, if we can put in the work, put in that sweat equity, good things happen, right? And now we don't have to talk ourselves into that we're good enough. Well, we've been here before, we've done this before, and now we can just not get in our way.
No, I love it. I absolutely love the answer. And I love, discussing a flow state, and just because I felt like I've been in it at times, the moment, the zen, the in the trough, so to speak. But I don't, like you said, if there was a way to manufacture it, I don't know if it exists. So
right,
this takes me.
Yeah, but being able to look, at the research, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, Stephen Kotler, all those ones that talk about flow state, it's interesting stuff. And I think there's stuff to learn from there. But again, I haven't been able to, weaponize it the way I want to.
Sure. Which is what, I think that was the point of the question is, can I weaponize this in some way, shape, or form? Great answer, brother. No, you've dug into all of them really, really well. Book, and I'm excited about this question, but book or books that you think firefighters should be reading?
All right. I'm a book geek, kind of like you. And, that's one of those things. And the biggest challenge is to make it, make sure that it's not, it's self-help, not shelf help. Like we have these books, right? In the background, we're in the queue, and then trying to, be able to get into them. But again, first I want to start off with your book. Like I said, hey, I appreciate this one. I've tabbed it up.
Thank you.
The 9 L's. If you haven't had a chance to be able to read that or give it to, again, a new leader, someone that's on the job, I loved it. So thanks for writing that. It's very well done. So I appreciate that one. The next one is being able to, my good friend, Captain Eric Tolan, he was on the scrap a while ago, and really just cut and paste his list.
Okay.
He's done such a great job curating a, list of, books that are, I think, just amazing for firefighters to start with. So go back and, read his list and, cut and paste that one. But then I wanted to get into a couple other recommendations for you that I have. And, the importance of reading, and you mentioned in your book, is actual physical reading is one thing. I'm always amazed that, I listen to an Audible, book, and then I go back and read it. I'm like, did I just skip over that?
Right. That's me. Me.
Yeah. But then again, we have time constraints, and sometimes,
I listen to a lot. I really enjoy listening to fiction. That's where I get my fiction fix. Is I audible a lot of fiction now. So, because I don't get the time to read fiction like I used to. So it's all eaten up with the shelf help. But go ahead.
Yeah, so if we can read the books, that's the number one answer. But then if we can, listen to them, take some good notes, and be able to refer to them, because if it's just going in one ear out the other, it's not doing us any good. It's no better than just entertainment, right? But it's all about knowledge acquisition. If someone tells me they hate to read, they hate books, well, I'm like, how do you learn things? Right? We only have so many opportunities to talk with amazing people, or go to lectures or all those things where knowledge acquisition comes from books and being able to learn from others. So really encourage people to do it. But go for some of these books. So there's a long list that I want to highlight, but I'll just go through some of them because I know these authors.
Okay.
Right, and I've read the books and I stand behind their books because they've been powerful to me. The first one is Deliberate Discomfort by Jason Van Camp. So former Green Beret, former Army football teammate, and he does a great job of telling his story of special operations selection, and then again moving it towards the scientific study, but behind the actions that he was doing.
Okay.
And again, how we can a lesson learned. So we have this study, we have this story that he brings other people and tells them, but then he also has someone to come in and interpret that, and then also someone to come in and give some skills on why we do these things. So great read. Again, Deliberate Discomfort by Jason Van Camp. The next one is Delete the Adjective by Lisa Jaster. So she was a West Point classmate of mine, and she was one of the first females to go through Army Ranger School.
Okay.
And I think she ended up being the third female to pass it, even though she went with everyone else, but she had to go through, she had to recycle one of the phases, but she did it when she was 40 years old and a mother of, two kids, and just amazing. And when I heard that she did that, again, it didn't shock me because, as a cadet, she literally and figuratively run circles around us. A complete badass, but her story ties a lot to the fire service. When we talk about the standard is the standard, I don't want it to be a floating standard. And especially being a company officer, again, with, just the amount of diversity that we have in the fire service, is a great way to be able to get one perspective. And she knocks it out of the park with her book.
Okay.
The next one is Believe and Achieve by Adam Wheeler. Adam Wheeler is a lieutenant on the Denver Fire Department, but he's also been a SWAT team officer. And before that, he's a bronze medal winning Greco-Roman wrestler. So he's definitely a guy you don't want to wrestle for the mob. But, his story is impactful because, he wasn't grown up with privilege, and he'd come over a lot of adversity. Like, he didn't even qualify for his state wrestling tournament at all, but yet he goes on to become, one of the most elite wrestlers in Greco-Roman wrestling to earn a bronze medal. He's the most humble guy, but he's got an incredible work ethic. He's a family man. He's into the job, and I've given this book to my kids and as gifts, and it's just a motivating book about staying with it. So
Believe and Achieve.
Believe and Achieve by Adam Wheeler.
Okay.
The next one. And
oh yeah,
have these officers on there, right? Mastering Fireground Command. And I always put the disclaimer that anything Brian Brush puts his name on, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to attend it, just because I think that much highly of him. And, having both authors, on here to talk about it, it's just a great resource to have. And love the quotes, love everything, and love the perspective, because it's not just theory, it's coming from application as well, real world experience, but it also ties in all the other studies. Some of the books, the references that are like that don't incorporate, the last 10 years of, study, and that one does. So definitely want to highlight that one. My last one, I won't keep you on here forever, is The Confident Mind by Dr. Nate Zinzer.
Yes.
So Dr. Zinzer was part of the Center for Enhanced Performance at West Point, which was performance psychology instructors and facilitators that were into sports psychology and helped us out quite a bit. So him and Dr. Olson and Major Platt were instrumental in bringing mental tools to us as athletes and cadets. But again, like we talked about in MacArthur's quote, on fields of friendly strife are sowing seeds that on other days, on other fields, are bear the fruits of victory. Meaning we didn't use those; we used them for sport, but then we used them, for a greater purpose as military officers and husbands and firefighters. But The Confident Mind is a great book, and it talks about performance psychology and specifically about confidence and how do we build confidence in some of the myths. So definitely check those ones out. Again,
Beautiful.
I know the authors. I love the books, and I want to share those with you.
I love the criteria you use to select your books, because after 300 episodes, I've been asking that question since the very first scraps where I had guests, and so it's hard to come up with stuff that hasn't been said before. And you did an amazing job of that. First of all, a bunch of those. The only one I've actually read was The Confident Mind. And,
okay, good.
I actually read that with Chief Dave LeBlanc, and we actually challenged each other and read it and then discussed it. It was a good challenge to each other. And he just picked it. He picked it randomly. I sent him pictures of like 10 books, and he picked that one, and we read it together. So it was a good time.
Very cool.
Two things to include. Castros. Chief Castros is coming up. I wanted to put the plug in there since you brought up the Mastering the Fireground Command. Chief Castros is coming up on episode. Well, I scrolled too far. Episode. I'm looking. There it is. October 7th, episode 322. So look forward to that. And then if you want to find the episode he referenced for books, Eric Tolan was 266. Scrap 266 to get that list of books that Chief Hageman referenced. So that being said, Chief, we have a thing we've been doing on the scrap for a while. It's called the 5 questions for firefighters. And we've done many, many iterations of the 5 questions for firefighters. When I say many, many, there's been 4 until tonight. And this is the brand new version of the 5 questions for firefighters. Never been answered before. 5 questions for firefighters in this format. There's 5 of them, as always. And some of them are the favorites that will never go away. So my first question to you before we get going is, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
All right, I'm ready.
There's no right or wrong answer, just your opinion. And the points are arbitrary, completely arbitrary, passed out by me with the help of the audience. So here we go. The 5 questions for firefighters version 5.0, according to Chief Hageman. Number 1, you can do anything in the world except be a firefighter. What would you choose to be?
Yeah. I'm blessed to feel like I've been do 2 occupations, being Army officer and being in the fire service. But if I had to pick another one, and I hope to actually probably do this one day, is I'd love to be a professor of performance psychology at one of the service academies. Like I talked about Doc Z and Colonel Olson and Colonel Platt, they were instrumental to me. They taught me so much. I'd love to have the opportunity to do the same. And the reason I say a service academy is because I think it again, has that philosophy of teaching performance psychology to kids, that are, applying it in sports and the classroom, but then using it for a bigger purpose, as military officers and also, husbands and wives. And now that my son just started his football journey at the Air Force Academy, I would love to do it at the Air Force Academy, to be able to pour into them and again, give back the way, those have given back to me.
Well, congrats to him on getting there, following in Dad's footsteps somewhat.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, it's a good one.
No doubt, brother. Be proud. Easy max points, especially with your passion for teaching, and so it just plays right into that. I love that. Number 2, and this is the first time ever, so I don't know how these questions are going to go. Some of them are first time ever. Obviously, number 2 is it's Jobtown. It's time. You're en route and responding. You got to think of the scene from Backdraft when he slaps that tape into that cassette deck. What song are you playing while en route?
I love this question. That list, that podcast list is, you could pick any one of those, but I think I'll go late 90s hip hop. And, that may actually be on cassette. So you could slap it in there, and it's, one of the Fugees, Wyclef Jean. We trying to stay alive.
We trying to stay alive. We don't have a lot of hip hop. Yeah. So that's that.
You got to listen, visualize yourself en route, doors up, throwing it in, and going to a job. And then my daughter, Nyla, also likes that one. So she approves as well.
She approves. Okay. We try. Which number is Nyla? Did you say Nyla?
She's my youngest daughter, number
Youngest
5.
daughter. Okay, number 5, the baby.
That's right.
All right, and you're raising her right with some 90s hip hop.
Oh yeah.
All right, easy max points, and I don't have to ask Sam. That one's never been put on the list. It will be added to the Spotify playlist. Number 3, tomorrow morning you wake up and you are the chief of department, and it doesn't have to be your department. You are a chief of department, and you can do whatever you want. Whatever you want. What is the first change you are making?
This one, I think, and I kind of alluded to it with Chief's question before, but for this one, I'd establish what we call kind of like a formal mentoring program to those, that are promoted, whether it's an engineer, a company officer, battalion chief, and not just be another task book, but be actual mandatory check-ins, after every shift, to be able to have the conversation of, how'd the day go? Let's talk through some issues, seek guidance, offer resources, just connect with people. Because, in lieu of having those, dedicated academies, what we can do is kind of develop this mentoring program, which I don't think will be tough to do. And I'd love to be able to have my hands in, implementing something like that, especially for the first 6 months. We know how critical, being in a new position is for the first 6 months, and just have those mandatory check-ins, right? Sometimes we just assume that we're bothering people, or they don't need it, or they don't want to hear it. No, let's mandatory do it. We'll agreement to, just check in with each other, hold each other accountable, up and down. What do you need from me? Okay. What do I need from you? This is how we do it. And being able to do that for the first 6 months at minimum. I think that's something that I'd love to do.
I love that. I love that answer. Hey, it ties into your teaching and your investment in people and your coaching and all of that tied together. But the other thing I love about it is it makes me want to ask, why don't we do more of it? What is as a fire service? I'm saying, I'm not pointing at any specific department, but just as a fire service, why do we get this so wrong in that?
Sometimes when you force formal mentoring, it becomes disingenuous, right? You want it to be organic, but then sometimes you rely on the same people over and over again. And I said not another task book, even though, there's certain things that we do have to check off and skills and whatnot. But I don't know. But
is it just the competence fatigue? So we ask so many, like the guys that are good at it, the guys that can do it well, we're like, okay, now do this guy, now do this guy, now do this guy.
Yeah, sometimes, but we'll see. Let's see if we can make it happen. And then see and adjust. Right? Maybe we'll crash and burn, but let's give it a shot.
All right, you got me talking off track. Max points 3 for 3. Number 4, this one is on the clock, like the Rushmore of old, and it's similar question, but you're writing backwards. You're a firefighter. It's a 4-man engine, and you can change it to a truck if you so choose. But 4-man engine, you can choose anyone. Who is your dream company to ride with? One driver, one officer, and another firefighter. Go.
Okay. Engineer, I'll have to go with my engineer at Engine 8. He was there for 30 years. He knew every hydrant. He knew, every plug location. He knew everything. And he was like a race car driver as well. So he was safe, efficient, but smooth and fast. He got us there. We were first in as much as possible. The other, my officer, I've never worked with him, but I always wanted to. My buddy Jim Remley, he's part of the HROC team too. He's been engine guy his entire career, right? Because we're going to shrink this down to engine people. Okay. So, he's a guy that I've always wanted to work for, knowledgeable, cancer survivor, just a complete badass. Jim Remley is the officer I'd love to work for. And my senior guy this is tough. I'm keeping up with Denver Fire, and there's so many great firefighters, but it's Nate Jameson. Nate Jameson, taught me at my first nozzle forward class before he got hired on the DFD, and he's just an absolute animal. I hope one day grow up to be like him, and I'd love to be able to work for him and have him as my senior guy.
7 seconds left. You got it in time. Easy max points, and I love the fact you kept it Denver. You explained to everybody who was the officer at Engine 8 or the driver at Engine 8.
Greg Sheehan.
Okay, I didn't hear his name, so I just went.
I missed it. Yeah,
I wanted to get his
name.
No, you're
retired
good.
Now, but he spent 28 years at that station running on the engine, and just an incredible engineer.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And you're the first person to do it, so I didn't know how that question would go, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah, max points, easy, 4 for 4, no pressure, but you're 4 for 4, max points. Number 5, heavy fire, searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or the first one going through the window on a window initiated search?
That's a tough one. I've been down several dirty hallways on a hose line, but God, I'd love to get an extra rep, VS, getting in there doing the search.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Okay, it's making sure. Easy. I love it. I love the answer. 5 for 5, max points, and officially puts 312 scraps in the books. And the first time those 5 questions have been answered. I enjoyed them, so I think they're going to stay. Thank you, Chief Hageman, for spending your evening with us. If there is someone who wants to get a hold of you, someone who wants to reach out, what is the best way to do so?
Social media. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Just shoot me a message. That's the easiest thing to do.
Perfect. There's some other things we do. First one is I like to ask for a challenge from you to the audience, the people who are listening specifically tonight, and the people that will listen early. And it's a challenge from you to them to get done before the next scrap comes out next week. We'll go off next Tuesday instead of the scrap special, but a challenge from you to them.
Yeah, and hopefully you did your homework from last week and got into one of those books that that was our homework assignment from last week. But for this week, those things that we talked about, and I'll just go off of that identity tool. So I want you to come up with 3 things, 3 words that mean something to you, that you want to aspire to be, and then reverse engineer that to be able to figure out what that means, what that looks like every day. What do you need to do every day to slowly start building up to that person you want to be?
On that identity exercise, do you specifically, like yours was the warrior scholar, your scholar father, which I love, by the way. Do you specifically go for roles, or is that something you're seeking, or is there other? What am I trying to say? Is it usually a role you're trying to define?
No, it's really whatever kind of resonates with you in the sense
Okay.
like I'd imagine if I was in high school, it would be athlete, leader, and
Okay.
friend or something like that.
Sure.
But it doesn't. But 3 is really a pretty effective number where I can do 3. I can remember 3.
Yeah.
But it can be 2. But come up with something and reverse engineer that to daily tasks.
I love that, brother. I can't wait to apply it to my life. I really can't. And the other thing I do is I like to ask, who is someone that needs to be on the scrap? I've had, over 300 guests now, or over 300 episodes, a lot of guests. I don't expect you to know everybody that's been on and find someone not, but someone that you think of that says, man, I would love to hear what he has to say. I'm always looking to add to my network.
Yeah, and there's some, and I'm going to keep it on the Denver Fire Department because there's people selfishly that I know that have influenced me and that continually influence others in such a positive light. But they need to be known. And, I'll start out with first Lieutenant on Rescue 1, Lee Montgomery. Incredible work ethic, truck, engine, technical rescue. I think he went to Emory-Riddle, so he's also an academic guy, but down-to-earth, blue-collar guy, and just an incredible firefighter and incredible officer, incredible friend. Another officer on Rescue 1 at Denver is Mike Gonzalez. So Mike embodies, what the Denver Fire Department is all about in a positive way. He's been on this department for 20 plus years, and to this day, he is extremely motivated. He's the expert. He's willing to sit down with anyone, teach them, lead them, and a great family man. So Mike Gonzalez as well. And I mentioned him. He was, the guy I want to work for on the back step is technician, firefighter, Nate Jameson, part of the rescue or the nozzle forward cadre, and he will outwork you and outstudy you and outproduce you. He has single-handedly changed engine operations for the Denver Fire Department in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Like I don't think anyone could. So being able to, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to those 3 badass firefighters and get them on the scrap.
I love it. The biggest problem with having this question is, like, you just gave me 3 that sound like bang up people to have on. The problem is there's only 52 weeks in the year, and the list keeps getting longer. The list is outrunning the weeks in the year. So, but it's a great problem to have. So thank you for sharing those with me. And I'll be reaching out to get their contact info to make sure it happens. All that being said, housekeeping time. Go to patreon.com/the Vigilantes. The Discord is up and running. We have so many discussions in there. In fact, today we were finalizing the 5 questions for firefighters, and the Vigilantes actually helped me define the first question, which I wasn't sure what we were going to go with, but I really do like you can be anything except a firefighter. What are you going to be? So I like that. We developed it today in the Discord, and that's the kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Of course, one of the cool parts of being a vigilante is you get to go to the after party, which occurs right now. It's getting ready to start happening as soon as we wrap up, and that's where we invite the guests to come and be roasted. And so, of course, Chief Hageman is invited. We will see if he is brave enough to show up and get roasted. And spoiler alert, it's the mildest roast in the history of roasts. But all that being said, coming up, there is a back to school special 2 days from today. Chief Kurt Isaacson is coming back on the scrap for, I believe it's his 6th appearance on the scrap. And that's going to be of course, it's the back to school special. So he is going to be challenging you. He is going to be bringing his Chief Ike energy, and we will see where that goes. All that being said, I am leaving out of the country for a vacation with my parents. We're going on a trip of a lifetime. It's going to be amazing. Really excited about it. But the good news for all the scrappers is that you'll actually have some decent scrap hosts over the next 3 weeks. You got Jeremy Donch from National Fire Radio. You've got Scott Hewlett, Multiple Calls Podcast, and you've got Jake Barnes from 3 Point Firefighter. They are going to be hosting the scrap while I am gone. They get to pick their own guests. They get to put their spin on it. So I hope you enjoy it. It should be a good time. The scrap carries on live every Tuesday, and I will not see you there unless I log in the middle of the night just to check it out. But all that being said, enough jabbering from me. We'll get to the after party. Chief Hageman, thank you for coming on and spending your evening with us and sharing your knowledge, your passion. You've been a phenomenal guest, and we still have another dozen questions we didn't even get to from the audience. And I'm not even sure we got to everything we planned to talk about in spite of that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
I will have to do it again because there's a lot I want to dig into. But all that being said, we'll go to the after party. Audience, every week you show up, you make the scrap magical. I love you all. Without you, it would not exist. So thank you. Keep coming. Keep bringing your questions. I love you. Thank you for tuning in live. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tones stay silent unless it is burning. This job will never be safe. So stay smart out there.